for anyone who's gone through teacher prep, the good news is you don't have to write out a lesson plan for every single lesson that you're going to be teaching during the school year. But you do have to do a lesson plan when you're evaluated by your primary evaluator. That would be an administrator at your school site. And you also have to do a lesson plan during the inquiry process. The reason for this is because we want to really think through the sequence of this lesson and think about each discrete part of it and make sure that we are adding all of those components that we learned about and were practiced in your teacher prep program. So this lesson plan, you'll notice, has the sequence that you probably are already familiar with. You want to complete this prior to your pre-observation conference with your CT, and that's highlighted in yellow to bring it to your attention. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't complete this with your CT, but a lot of times a participating teacher will think through the lesson before the CT and the PT meet. So this might be one of those documents that you do alone, and then you meet with your CT and talk about it. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You go through the introduction. You need to introduce the learning objective. And you need to explain to students why they're learning what they're learning and what they're going to be learning. And then we go through a direct instruction model. How are you going to systematically explain each step of that learning objective? Then you'll go through I do, we do, you do. That's when you model instruction. You do some kind of guided practice, and you also check for understanding to make sure all students understand what they're doing. And then you go into an independent practice. So how are they going to practice what they've learned? And I would hope that they would have an opportunity to do that during class and not just for homework. Then we go and drill down into formative assessment. What are you going to collect during the lesson? You're actually going to look at Form C-8 is a reflection of the formative assessment that you collect. Or did I say C-8? I meant C-9, as it says here. So we want to figure out what's going to be worthy and valuable to analyze. And then lastly, how are you going to give closure to your lesson? How are students going to summarize their learning from today's lesson? Again, I think you've noticed if you've watched any of my tutorial videos, differentiated instruction keeps popping up. You have already listed some things that you might do to differentiate instruction. Hopefully you looked back at those lists and you pulled something for this lesson. And how are you going to maybe alter the content, the process, the product? You can add student choice, or you can change the learning environment to differentiate instruction for your students. So I've given you all of those ideas there, but you probably already brainstormed some of those ideas in your C2 lesson series map. So go back and look at that and pull from that for this particular lesson. And then you'll go into your pre-observation conference with your CT.